Okay, today we're going to continue discussing the ease in following the example of the Prophet's companions. In fact, guys, from their example, we should find strength as Muslims, strength in dealing with the trials of our life. And let's look into some of their life struggles and see if this can be of benefit to us. Now, remember, guys, one of the things that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam rehearsed over and over and over again to the companions whenever they would complain about how difficult life was, whenever they would complain about how the unbelievers and the hypocrites were causing so many problems, the Prophet would remind them of the following words of Allah, where Allah says in the interpretation of the meaning, do you think just because you say you believe that you will not be tested? That's what the Prophet used to say to them. Oh Prophet, I can no longer endure the fact that my father has cut me off. We had one companion, guys. He came from a very rich family. And he was very, very wealthy. And his mother adored him. He used to wear the most beautiful shoes. Okay? His mother would buy shoes from him from the Romans, the Persians. He had a new pair of shoes to match every outfit he wore, different colors. He was a handsome, dandy young man. And then when he became Muslim, his mother told him, since until you leave that religion, I refuse to speak to you. I will cut you off from all my money, and I will have nothing to do with you unless you denounce that religion and you denounce Muhammad as your leader. The young boy told his mother, I love you, but I am not going to denounce my Lord nor the Prophet for you. He ended up migrating with the Prophet to Medina when Allah sent down the commands for them to migrate. That young boy participated in the Battle of Badr. And after the Battle of Badr, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked the battlegrounds looking at his dead followers, they came upon the body of this young boy. He had no shoes on his feet. He didn't even have a shroud that was long enough to cover his body. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam bent down to the ground and held this boy in his arms, and the Prophet wept. He said he used to wear the most beautiful shoes. He used to walk around in Mecca with the most beautiful shoes, and we can't even find a garment to shroud him in. Subhanallah. That's the faith of these companions, guys. Those were the type of trials that they were subjected to. Do you think just because you say you believe in Allah that you won't be tested? Allah tells us He will test us with your money, with your mother, your father, your wives, your children. The things you love the most, Allah will test you to see if you love those things more than He. The companions, they understood this. Many of them, like that young boy, they paid with their lives. They sacrificed their lives for the cause of Allah, to show Allah that he comes before their mothers, before their money, before even a pair of shoes. We have to understand, guys, as Muslims, that the stronger we grow in our faith, the more severe the test from Allah will be. And again, the reason Allah sends these tests to us, as we talked about yesterday, is as a means of us proving to him that we are worthy of his closeness and that we truly do believe in him. That young boy proved his faith. He migrated with the Prophet, left his mother, left his riches, left his beautiful clothing and all his money to move to Medina to worship his Lord, and he paid with his life. We have to understand, guys, life can become difficult for us. But the difference between the Muslim and the believer is the believer never loses hope. Even though we're faced with trials, even though we're faced with hardships, we never lose hope. We utilize the tools that Allah has given us in this plight for paradise. And we recognize that the best tool that Allah has given us is the example of the Prophet and those companions. Again, just like the young boy I just told you of, the companions were unable to practice their religion openly. So Allah sent down the command allowing them to migrate to Ethiopia. But even when they migrated, that too was met with challenges, guys. Look at what happened when the Muslims did leave for Ethiopia. When the Muslims joined with the king of Ethiopia, the Quraysh heard about this, and they sent an army after them. They sent 2 of their leaders bearing gifts to the king of Ethiopia, hoping that he would send their immigrants back to them. And when the king refused, the Quraysh began to lie on the Muslims. They knew that the king was a Christian, so they lied on the Muslims and told the king that Muslims hate Jesus. When they told the king this, he didn't know if it was truth or falsehood, but he was a wise man. So he called the Muslims to come before him, and he asked them, is it true that your religion hates Jesus? Is it true that you guys speak badly against the Virgin Mary? Well, the Muslims delegated one of the companions. His name was Jafar. He was a cousin of the Prophet Muhammad, and he was known for being a very good speaker. The Muslims chose him to speak on behalf of them. So the king asked Jafar, he said, explain to me what it is that you believe. Explain to me what your religion says about Jesus. And that's when Jafar began to recite the surah or the chapter of the Quran entitled Chapter Maryam. This is a chapter of the Quran that Allah revealed to the Prophet, and he in turn revealed to the companions. It tells the story of Jesus, the story of the Virgin Mary, the story of her family, and how she was honored, how she was one of the best of Allah's creation. And after Jafar narrated the story, the surah, to the king took a stick from off the ground and he drew a line, and he looked at the Muslims and he said, Jesus does not exceed what you have said, even by the length of this stick. Many of the king's bishops have broken down and cried when they heard the story of Maryam. And from hearing the truth, being the wise man that the king was, he told the Quraysh, I will not return these men back to you. He said, even if you were to give me a mountain of gold, I will never deliver these men to you. And then the king ordered that all the gifts that the Quraysh had given him be returned. And he told them to leave his land. And he told the Muslims, you are allowed to live here and practice your religion for as long as you want. SubhanAllah. So again, from every hardship comes relief. From every hardship comes relief. Allah tested the companions to see what would they do. Allah sent the same test, a similar test to the Jews. Remember when Allah sent Moses to lead the children of Israel from out of Egypt. Remember the Jews, they failed their tests. When Allah told them to enter into the land of the Canaanites and fight them and defeat them, they refused. But as you can see, the Muslims were different. We were obedient to Allah and obedient to his messenger. And so Allah raised them up, increased their faith and their closeness to him. Again, with every growth of faith, guys, you become closer to Allah. And once you become closer to Allah, it doesn't end there. Allah will send another test to you. And once you pass that test, Allah will send an even greater reward. And the trials will keep on going until you die. The Muslims who migrated to Ethiopia, they passed their tests. But what about the Muslims who were left in Mecca, who were unable to migrate? Well, guess what? Allah was so pleased with how the Muslims behaved in Ethiopia. He was so pleased with the patience they shown and how they refused to panic against the Quraysh, that Allah blessed the Muslims in Mecca by allowing one of the great leaders of the Quraysh to embrace Islam, and that leader was Hamza. Hamza, he was a powerful and feared warrior amongst the Quraysh. He was also an uncle of the Prophet Muhammad. He embraced Islam right after the Muslims migrated to Ethiopia. And when he embraced Islam, the confidence of the Muslims grew from his conversion, because he was a powerful warrior, respected by everyone and feared by many. The Quraysh were hesitant to torture the Muslims in the presence of Hamza. So again, this goes to show, guys, the more you grow in your faith, the closer you move to Allah. And then Allah will send you a test, and if you pass it, he'll give you a greater reward. The Muslims were rewarded with the conversion of Hamza. And that by the way, Hamza dared the Quraysh to persecute the companions, and so the persecutions against them decreased as a result of his conversion. So we have to keep in mind, guys, again, life is nothing but one big trial for us. We were created to worship Allah. We were put here on this earth to be tested in our belief. None of us are free of enemies. Whenever you're living your life trying to do the right thing, there will always be enemies against you who will try to deter you and who will try to pull you back to how you used to be. And many times you may find that your enemies may outnumber your supporters. The same way the Prophet was with his companions. He had supporters, but the companions did not outnumber the Quraysh. There were more who were against them than there were people who were for them. But we learn from the prophet and his companions that even though the enemies of the truth may outnumber you, and they may come up with hurtful ways of harming you, like the Quraysh did, lying on the prophet, saying that we hated Jesus. Even though the enemies will come up with hurtful ways of harming you, we have to keep in mind that Allah is always there to protect the believers. And Allah, He is the one to vindicate us. Just like Allah vindicated those companions who migrated to Ethiopia from the lies that the Quraysh had said about them. So this made the Quraysh angry. The unbelievers and the hypocrites were angry. They could not stop the Prophet Muhammad. They could not stop his people from migrating to Ethiopia. They could not stop his call to the truth. And they couldn't fight him because now he had Hamza. He had Hamza as a protector. So they decided, let's do something else. Let's boycott him. Let's boycott not only him, but let's boycott his entire tribe. The whole branch of the Quraysh that Muhammad is from. Let's boycott them. We won't marry any of their women. We won't give them any food. We won't buy from them. We will boycott them, and they will eventually have to denounce that faith. They wrote this boycott up on a piece of paper, and they attached it to the ceiling of the Kaaba, saying that anyone who deals with the tribe of Muhammad will be an outcast with him. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told about this letter, and when he was told what the letter said, he turned to Allah. He didn't panic. He didn't freak out. He didn't get mad. Instead, he turned to Allah. And he called upon Allah, and he asked Allah. He said, "Oh Allah, please curse the one who wrote this letter. Oh Allah, curse the one who put this letter there." So he turned to Allah, and he asked Allah to vindicate. He asked Allah, to help the believers. And Allah answered the Prophet's dua. Allah answered his dua by causing the man who wrote the letter to become paralyzed in his hand. You see that? See how Allah works. A lot of times people will come. They will say, "Subhanallah, why does it seem like Allah has turned his back on me? There seems to be so many bad things happen to me in my life. My husband has divorced me. My daughter has been diagnosed with sickle cell anemia. I can't find a job. Why is it that so many bad things are happening to me?" Well, the answer is, look at yourself. Look at yourself and ask yourself, how many people have you hurt today? How many people have you hurt with your tongue? How many people have you hurt with your hands? So many Muslims today waste their time on the internet speaking about this religion without knowledge, saying things about Islam that's not true, slandering other people who do know the religion. Perhaps these bad things are happening to you because people are tired of you oppressing them. So they are asking Allah to help them against their oppressors. So maybe that's why your husband left you. Maybe that's why your child is diagnosed as being sick. Maybe that's why all these bad things are happening to you. Remember, guys, we have to always look to ourselves. What am I doing that I shouldn't be doing? Correct yourself. Jihad of the self. Correct yourself. Make sure that you are not hurting others. And then maybe Allah will lift up his punishment against you. And maybe you won't feel like Allah has abandoned you. You see that? Because Allah will answer the dua of those who are oppressed. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us in an authentic hadith, guys, there is no screen between the dua of a person who is oppressed and Allah. That sister that you keep backbiting and slandering and lying on, maybe she's making dua against you, and that's why your life is turned upside down. Again, remember, guys, anyone who claims to be Muslim, that means that their property, their life, and their honor is off limits. How many Muslims have you killed today with your tongue by attacking their reputation, their character? So again, guys, we have to keep in mind Allah is there to protect and defend those who are sincere in their faith, those who trust in him, just like he did the Prophet Muhammad and his companions. Those companions were sincere in their faith. They trusted in Allah, so Allah protected them. Remember, we're always having to deal with the hypocrites. We're always having to contend with enemies who want to stand in the way of the truth. Well, those enemies need to be careful and hope that you don't make dua against them. I tell you guys all the time, the power of dua. Dua, as Dr. Dramali says, dua is the weapon. People are oppressing you. People are hurting you. Turn to Allah and complain, and see how quick Allah vindicates you. Just as he did the Prophet, just as he did those companions. Okay? And again, guys, just when you get over one hardship, another one begins. Because again, Allah sends trials to the believer as a means of purifying him of his sins, and as a means of teaching him patience, and as a means of bringing him closer to him. So why did Allah allow that boycott against the Prophet to last for 3 years? It took 3 years. It was 3 years, guys, before Allah answered that dua and took the boycott away. But why did Allah allow the Prophet and his family and his companions to go through 3 years of that? Well, again, it was to increase their faith, to teach the Prophet patience, and also to purify the companions of their sins and to bring them closer. You see that? And so this is the status with all of us. We are all put through trial after trial. But again, remember, Allah will never try us with anything that we can't bear. So we have to learn to remain patient. Keep making dua and know that Allah's help is near. It may take a year. It may take 2 years. It may even take 3 years for Allah to respond. But still, you remain patient and persevere. And Allah's help is near. And again, once that trial ends, you can expect another one. And this is what happened with the Prophet and his companions. After the Prophet made dua, it took 3 years, Allah ended that boycott. And after the boycott ended, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was again faced with more hardship. Because just 6 months after the boycott ended, he lost 2 of his greatest supporters. His uncle Abu Talib and his beloved wife Khadijah. They both died just 3 days apart from each other. See that? Allah alleviated the boycott. But 6 months later, 3 days apart, the prophet lost his uncle, who was his supporter, and his beloved wife, Khadijah. When he lost his uncle's protection. And when his uncle died, guess what? The trials against the prophet and his companions began to increase, because now he didn't have Abu Talib to protect him anymore. And that's when Allah sent down the command telling the prophet that it is no longer safe for him or his companions to live in Mecca. They had to make migration. They had to find another place to live. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he set out, guys, trying to find another place to live. And he went to the town of Taif in hopes of finding people there who would help him, support him, and would be receptive to Islam. But when he went to the city of Taif, the people there, they treated him worse than his own people. These were the people who turned their dogs and their children out against him. They ran him out the city, throwing rocks at him. Subhanallah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this was one of the most darkest moments in his life, when the people of Taif ran him away. But however, despite this, he returned back to Mecca. And when he returned back to Mecca, the Prophet again turned to Allah. He said, "Oh Allah, I complain only to you. And I'm complaining to you of my weakness and my lack of means to accomplish." The prophet began to doubt himself, guys. This is how low he was at this point. Remember, guys, each and every one of us will experience moments of weakness of faith. Our Prophet Muhammad, he was a human being like you and me. He had moments of weakness too. This was one of his weakest moments. He began to question himself. He said, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not good enough for you, Allah, to convey your message. Maybe someone else is better. But again, guys, Allah subjects us to calamities just as a means of testing our faith. After the Prophet made this dua, Allah sent an angel to him. And this angel was the angel of the mountains. And this angel said to him, "O Muhammad, your Lord has heard your call to him, and he has sent me to you. All you have to do is give me the word, and I will cause the mountains to crush and destroy the people of Taif for what they've done to you." See that? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at that angel. He said, "Allah sent you to me to destroy these people if I wish?" The angel said, "Yes, just say the word, Muhammad." The Prophet looked at the angel. He said, "I would rather have someone from their offspring who will grow up to believe in Allah and worship him rather than destroy them all. So please don't destroy them. I'll just make dua. I'll make dua that perhaps their children will end up embracing Islam." And when the Prophet did this, he proved that he was indeed worthy of being the greatest of mankind. He proved to Allah that you are worthy, you are prophet, because you put the needs of others above yourself. Any other man would have told that angel, kill them, destroy them, avenge me. But instead you said, no, I'll just pray for their children. Subhanallah. And again, from every hardship comes relief. Right after this angel came to the prophet, when he left, the prophet returned back to Mecca. And when he returned back to Mecca, one of the leaders of the Quraysh, whose name was Mutam, this was a powerful leader. He was a good warrior. He had many sons, and the people respected him and feared him. This man, when he saw Muhammad enter, he told his sons, put your weapons on, and I want you to stand at the corners and guard the gates, because when Muhammad comes back, I plan to protect him. I plan to protect Muhammad. The prophet didn't know this. As he entered into the city of Mecca after his encounter with the angel, this man stood up and said, oh Muhammad, I, Mutam, and my sons, we offer our protection to you. And let no one touch him. Let no one disturb him, or me and my sons will avenge him. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was shocked. See, this was Allah's reward to him, because he remained patient in dealing with the people of Taif, because he put the needs of others before himself. Look what Allah did here, Muhammad. Your uncle Abu Talib is dead, but look, you now have another protector, Mutam and his sons, and they all became Muslim. They all became Muslim. They all became Muslim. Mutam, he stood up right there in front of the Kaaba. He said, oh people of Quraysh, I have given asylum to Muhammad, so let none of you harm him. The prophet was shocked. He went to the Kaaba. He touched the Yemeni corner. He said, thank you, Allah. And he offered a 2-rakat prayer to thank Allah for this. And then after he finished praying those 2 rakats, he stood up to go home, and Mutam and all his sons surrounded him. They said, we will escort you back to your home and let no one come near you. Subhanallah. You see that, guys? This is how Allah rewards us. Allah sends us through hardships as a means of testing our faith, to see if we believe in him, to see if we will implement our learnings into our lives, if we will show patience with Allah, patience with his decree. And once you pass that test, Allah will send the reward, just as he did to the prophet. He sent the reward of having one of the greatest, most powerful leaders of the Quraysh, Mutam, and all his sons protect him and embrace Islam. See that? All because he remained firm in his belief. All because he remained patient. And all because he put Allah before himself and before others. This is something for us to ponder, guys, in our everyday lives. Because again, we will go through hardships. Every day of your life as a believer is going to be spent doing jihad on one of those 3 levels. Either you're going to be struggling within yourself, against yourself, or you're going to be struggling against the unbelievers or the hypocrites, or you're going to have to struggle against injustice. Our prophet dealt with jihad on all these levels. His companions did too. And their behavior, their reaction to hardships is an example for us all. We need to learn from them, guys.